Hi, my name is Daniel Kornev. I'm CEO of Generative Assistants. Here's a demo that showcases you how you can control dialogue in a system where you have tighter control over large language model. In this case, on both sides of the screen, you can see ChatGPT 3.5 Turbo. It's the latest model. On the right, we can see a typical experience of ChatGPT. On the left-hand side, you can see a small demo we coined for our customer in Brazil, in London. So the purpose of the demo is as follows. Imagine that we have an employee working for a company. They got into conflict with their colleague and they want to talk to someone. They cannot talk to someone from the company itself, but they can talk to a coach of sort, like a performance coach or something like that. On the right, we will try to talk to ChatGPT with a prompt that is more or less similar to what we have on the left. But on the right, the only way how the conversation is controlled is done by this prompt and prompt alone. On the left-hand side, in contrast, the system actually has two components. One of them is controlling the current state of the conversation between it, representing virtual coach, and user. The second component is working on a higher level of abstraction. It has a full plan of the conversation between the user and the coach, and it controls and changes the behavior of the smaller first system by changing its prompt to control conversation based on the plan of this higher level system. So let's try. So here we are at the first step. I called it Wendy, like Wendy Rose from Billions. And let's start the session. So we'll start saying that I'm really annoyed by John's behavior. System on the left will generate response more or less quickly. System on the right, I'm sorry. System on the left will take a little bit more time. So system on the right say, thank you for sharing it with me. Can you tell me more about John's behavior, how it's affecting you? Similar things, more or less, are happening with system on the left. System on the left is basing its behavior on a specific pattern. So let's say that he is always trying to make me do his tasks, and if he does something by himself, he never does it right. Put it here, and we put it here. And put it here. So we'll have to get a new response by Wendy. Okay, so it acknowledged that it sounds like we're feeling frustrated with John's behavior. Can you tell me more about how his actions are affecting your work and your relationship with him? It's important for me to understand the situation so that we can work together to find a solution. So before we will move any further, it is important to clarify that a conversation between coach and user should work in such a way that coach is mostly invisible during the coach session. So our coach session on the left tries to be very short in its responses. As you can see here on the right-hand side, ChatGPT with simple prompt starts to provide longer answers. So this on the left says, it sounds like you're feeling frustrated with John's behavior. Can you tell me more about how his actions affecting your work and your relationship with him? So you can see it has a formula of sort. First, it acknowledges what's happening. Second, it asks you a question. And so the technology, it specifies that it is important for the system to understand what's going on to figure out the solution. But what is also important here is system on the left is not judging, while system on the right brings some sort of a judging. As you can see, it says, it sounds like John is not respecting your boundaries, not carrying out his own responsibilities effectively, and so on. Okay. So let's move forward. Can you tell me more about how it's actually affecting your work? Okay, so let's say that how often? How often? So I can his option. We put the phrase here. He just texts me in private messages, say he doesn't understand anything, doesn't even know how to do basic things. And we do the same thing here because we're frustrated. Okay, so here we can see on the right hand side that the system is again giving evaluation of what's happening with John and trying to judge John in this conversation. On the left-hand side, Wendy is saying that sounds frustrating. It's important to have clear communication and so on, and start asking questions. It's important that it's not judging; it's keeping its response short. Let's continue. So, have you tried talking to John about your concerns? Let's say that no. On the right-hand side, how do you feel when John asks for your help, and how do you react to his requests? How do you feel? So we cannot actually say how do you feel, but we can say something like it makes me really angry. Let's go with that. So system on the left continues moving towards the conversation. So see if it understands it, it gives it neutral response. So it says in our coaching sessions, we can work together to develop strategies for communicating effectively with John. On the right-hand side, it says a lot more again. And it starts to suggest you what to do. This is quite interesting. So system on the left is not exactly suggesting you what to do. System on the right is suggesting you to do that. Okay. So how we try talking to John about how his behavior is affecting you. On the left-hand side, it asks you in your coaching session, we can work together. Yes, sure. The right-hand side, have you tried to talk to John about his behavior? So let's say no, not really. Look, now this is a huge response here. Instead of diving deep into the relationship with the user, the system on the right gives you specific steps to do, while system on the left is not judging again, not giving you exact steps, but tries to invoke you to think. So one of the things we learned from talking to our customer, back to the bigger problem of being building a performance coach, is that performance coach doesn't have to build a solution for you, provide a solution for you. Instead, the coach has to make you to think, reflect, and find a solution on their own. And here it is interesting that it invokes you to think and reflect more and more inside the conversation, the system on the left, while system on the right starts to give you specific recommendation, which is wrong. So it asks us, let's start by having you share your perspective on the conflict with John. Can you tell me more about what's been going on? Okay. So what is going on? By the way, it's important to see what's happening. So we have multiple steps in this conversation. Step one is welcoming the client, introducing themselves, establishing rapport, emphasizing confidentiality. After that, we start encouraging the client to share, so the system goes as planned by the conversation plan, and it starts asking open-ended questions. It can use clarification, identifying areas for further exploration, and so on. System on the right doesn't have any specific plan, so it more or less loosely follows the plan here. But it doesn't follow a specific plan. It cannot control plan. It cannot control execution of the plan. It cannot adapt the plan, and so on and so forth. Okay, so can you tell me what's going on more? Okay. So as I said before, he was trying to make me do his job and then taking all the credit. Let's go here. Let's take a look at the system on the right. So it's interesting that the system on the right is no longer asking you any kind of questions. Instead of giving you questions and provoking you to think, system on the right stopped functioning as a good performance coach would have to. Instead of providing you questions, more and more questions to let you reflect, let you figure out the answers by yourself, it tries to give you a response. And at this moment, it no longer gives you any option to continue conversation because they no longer ask you questions. The system on the left, it continues doing about that. No, really? No, was just always like that. So system on the right stopped helping us. System on the left continues helping us based on the plan. And that's interesting. So at this point, what's happening is step 2 has been completed. And now we are in the current step 3. We have to explore client's priorities, identify short and long-term goals, prioritize goals, and so on. What would like to, so it says it's understandable in terms of resolving the conflict with John. What would you like to see happen? What are approaches and desired outcomes for this situation? So now we can certainly continue the conversation, but the most important thing is here. The system on the left, going back to the beginning of the system, has a plan. This plan is controlled by one of the two components of the system. The bigger component, see a big plan. And the second component has specific smaller subplan for a specific task. This is how that subplan looks like. And what is important here is the system on the left controls the narrative of the conversation by tracking how the goal that was asked by it to be controlled, to control achievement of that goal, how is this happening? And the system is able to figure out when it is the time when the person and the system achieved the goal and can move on to the next step. It continues controlling the behavior of the system, so it never talks a lot, it never gives you judgment, it never gives you instructions what to do, but instead it follows the protocol of the methodologies that are usually used by performance coaches. And instead of talking a lot, it gives more space for the user. And instead of giving judgments and asks user provoking questions to ensure that the user will have an option or an opportunity to reflect and figure out answers on their own. And this is where the big difference lies between a system which has one static prompt and no self-control, like the one we have in ChatGPT on the right-hand side, compared to the system that has control on the left-hand side. So that's a demo. I'm not sure if it's too short as much as I would love it to be, but I hope you enjoyed it, and I will be happy to